How does a nation's destiny get written? Is it etched in stone by the circumstances of its birth? Or can a people rewrite their own story? Consider for a moment the archipelago of Cape Verde, 10 small volcanic islands scattered in the Atlantic Ocean, about 350 miles off the coast of Senegal. For centuries, its name was, pretty much synonymous with suffering. It was this barren outpost forged in the crucible of the transatlantic slave trade, a place where human beings were treated as cargo. Its history was one of famine, drought, and the brutal indifference of a distant colonial power. Yet today, Cape Verde stands as a testament to the power of human resilience, a stable democracy that has become a role model for the African continent and beyond. This is a story of transformation, a journey from the depths of despair to the heights of hope. The story begins back in the 15th century, a time of great exploration and honestly even greater exploitation. Portuguese navigators, venturing down the African coast, stumbled upon these uninhabited islands around 1460. They were dry, rocky, and at first glance, pretty much without value, but the Portuguese saw a strategic potential that would, well, alter the course of history forever. The islands were perfectly positioned to become a central hub, a logistical warehouse for the most monstrous enterprise of the age, the transatlantic slave trade. They established the settlement of Ribeira Grande, later renamed Cidade Vela, on the island of Santiago. This would become the first European colonial city in the tropics, a place built not on noble ideals, but on the business of bondage. From the shores of West Africa, countless men, women, and children were captured and brought to Cape Verde. Here, they were held in pens, sorted, and seasoned before being forced onto ships bound for the Americas. The islands became a laboratory for the brutal mechanics of slavery, a place where cultures were shattered and new identities were violently forged. The very air seemed to carry the weight of sorrow. The volcanic soil soaked up the tears of generations. For nearly 400 years, Cape Verde was a critical gear in a vast, inhuman machine, its fate seemingly sealed as a footnote in a story of immense tragedy, a place defined only by the chains that bound its people. But, history is never a straight line. Even in the darkest of times, seeds of a new future were being planted. The very act that was meant to destroy people, the mixing of Europeans and Africans in a context of profound inequality, gave rise to something entirely new. A unique Creole culture, or Criollo, began to emerge. It was a culture born of survival, a blend of African traditions and Portuguese influences, expressed through a new language, new music, and new ways of seeing the world. This culture became a quiet act of defiance, a statement that even in bondage, a people could create a soul. This new identity would become the bedrock upon which a future nation would be built, proving that a people's spirit can never be fully colonized. Life under Portuguese colonial rule was, a relentless struggle against two powerful forces, nature and the crown. The islands of Cape Verde are located in the Sahelian belt, making them susceptible to devastating cycles of drought that could last for years. These periods of environmental crisis were met not with aid from Lisbon, but with neglect. Famine swept through the archipelago with terrifying regularity, claiming the lives of tens of thousands. The colonial administration did little to invest in the island's infrastructure or develop sustainable agriculture. Instead, it focused on extracting what little wealth it could, leaving the local population to fend for themselves against starvation and disease. This systemic neglect bred a deep sense of abandonment among the people. These hardships forged a society defined by resilience and a unique spirit of solidarity known as morabeza. This untranslatable concept speaks to a gentle hospitality, an amiable spirit, and a profound sense of community. It was the social glue that held the society together when everything else was falling apart. Neighbors shared what little food they had. Communities pooled their resources to survive. This spirit was a direct response to the harsh realities of their existence. It was a way of creating a humane world in an inhumane system. The people learned to rely on each other, not on a distant and uncaring colonial master, planting the seeds of self-governance long before independence was a political reality. The most significant development of this era was the consolidation of the Creole identity. The Cape Verdean people were neither fully African nor fully European. They were something new, a fusion of two worlds. The Criollo language, a blend of Portuguese and West African languages, became the true mother tongue of the islands, spoken in homes and marketplaces. It was the language of everyday life, of love songs, and of shared secrets. This linguistic uniqueness gave the people a powerful sense of a shared identity, distinct from both mainland Africa and colonial Portugal. It was a culture created from the fragments of broken histories, a testament to the creative power of human beings to build a home in the world, no matter the circumstances. This burgeoning Creole culture also contained the embers of resistance. Because of their mixed heritage and Crioulo language, some Cape Verdeans were granted a liminal status within the Portuguese colonial empire, often serving as mid-level administrators and sailors. This gave them a degree of education and exposure to the outside world that was denied to many other colonized peoples. They read books about liberty and revolution. They traveled the seas and saw other nations fighting for their freedom. This class of educated Creoles, known as the Ladinos, began to articulate a vision of a Cape Verde free from Portuguese rule, a nation built on its unique cultural identity and its people's incredible capacity for survival against all odds. The call for independence found its most powerful voice in one man, Amilcar Cabral. Born in Guinea-Bissau to Cape Verdean parents, Cabral was a brilliant agronomist, a poet, and a revolutionary thinker. He possessed a rare ability to connect with the common people, to translate complex political ideas into a language they could understand. He did not see the fight for freedom as simply a matter of replacing a white colonial administrator with a black one. For Cabral, the ultimate goal was to empower the people, to restore their dignity, and to build a society free from all forms of exploitation. His famous directive, "Tell no lies, claim no easy victories," became the moral compass of the liberation movement he would lead. In 1956, Cabral, along with his half-brother Luis Cabral and other nationalists, founded the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, or PIGC. The party's genius was its unified approach, recognizing the shared history and cultural ties that bound the two Portuguese colonies. Cabral understood that their liberation was intertwined. He spent years walking through villages in Guinea-Bissau, conducting what he called an agricultural survey but what was, in reality, a deep study of the people's needs and aspirations. He built a powerful grassroots movement based on improving daily life, establishing schools and health clinics in liberated territories long before political independence was won. The PIGC launched its armed struggle against the Portuguese colonial army in 1963. The war was long and brutal, fought primarily in the dense forests of Guinea-Bissau. While Cape Verde itself did not see widespread fighting due to its geography, the island served as a crucial base for political organizing and clandestine support. Cape Verdeans at home and in the diaspora contributed funds, spread information, and kept the dream of freedom alive. Cabral's leadership was not just military, it was intellectual. He argued that culture itself was an act of resistance, that by embracing their Creole identity, the people were already fighting for their independence. His ideas inspired liberation movements across Africa and the world. Tragically, Amilcar Cabral would not live to see the dawn of the freedom he fought for. He was assassinated in Conakry, Guinea in 1973, just months before independence was declared. His death was a devastating blow, orchestrated by Portuguese agents who hoped to decapitate the movement. But they had underestimated the strength of the foundation Cabral had built. His ideas were too deeply rooted, his movement too well organized. The struggle continued, fueled by the memory of their fallen leader. On July 5, 1975, following the Carnation Revolution in Portugal which toppled the fascist regime, Cape Verde finally achieved its independence. The streets of Praia and Mindelo erupted in celebration, a joyous release from 500 years of colonial rule. In the first years of freedom, Cape Verde, like its sibling nation Guinea-Bissau, was governed under the one-party rule of the PIGC. This was a common model for newly independent African nations at the time, seen as a necessary means to ensure stability and national unity after the divisive colonial era. The government, led by President Aristides Pereira, focused on the monumental tasks of nation-building. It worked to establish a national education system, improve public health, and combat the persistent threat of drought through ambitious reforestation and water conservation projects. The early years were marked by a sense of shared purpose and socialist ideals, driven by the legacy of Amilcar Cabral's vision. However, the union with Guinea-Bissau proved to be short-lived. A military coup in Bissau in 1980 fractured the relationship between the two nations. In response, Cape Verde peacefully dissolved the union, and in 1981, established the African Party for the Independence of Cape Verde, or PICV, as its sole governing body. For the next decade, the PICV governed unchallenged. While the country remained stable and avoided the political violence that plagued many of its neighbors, a growing desire for greater political freedom began to stir beneath the surface. The people had fought for liberation, and for many, that liberation included the right to choose their own leaders in a competitive system. What happened next is what truly sets Cape Verde apart. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, as a wave of democratic change swept across the globe, Cape Verdeans began to openly call for a multi-party system. Instead of clinging to power, the ruling PICV listened. In a remarkable display of political maturity, the party initiated a process of constitutional reform. In 1990, they amended the constitution to allow for opposition parties. There was no civil war, no violent uprising, no international pressure. The transition was peaceful, internally driven, and a reflection of the nation's deep-seated respect for dialogue and consensus, a modern expression of Morabeza. The country held its first multi-party elections in 1991. The opposition party, the Movement for Democracy, or MPD, won a resounding victory, and the PAICV gracefully conceded defeat. This peaceful transfer of power was a landmark moment, not just for Cape Verde, but for all of Africa. It demonstrated that a one-party state, born from a liberation struggle, could evolve into a vibrant, competitive democracy. Since then, power has changed hands between the two major parties several times, always peacefully and always through the ballot box. This commitment to democratic principles has become the cornerstone of Cape Verde's modern identity and its greatest source of strength. With its political foundation secured, modern Cape Verde turned its focus to human development. Recognizing that its greatest resource was its people, the government made education and public health its top priorities. Despite its limited budget, the country has achieved one of the highest literacy rates in Africa, with nearly universal primary school enrollment. Investment in healthcare has led to dramatic improvements in life expectancy and reductions in infant mortality, with indicators that rival those of many developed nations. This focus on human capital is a direct continuation of Cabral's philosophy, that the true measure of a nation's wealth is the well-being and capacity of its citizens. This commitment to good governance has made Cape Verde a pillar of stability in an often turbulent region. Its political system is characterized by transparency, respect for the rule of law, and a strong record on human rights. This has not gone unnoticed by the international community. The country has earned a reputation as a reliable partner, attracting foreign investment and development aid. In 2007, the United Nations recognized its remarkable progress by graduating Cape Verde from the category of least developed countries, a significant milestone that few nations have achieved. It stands as proof that good governance is not a luxury, but the most effective tool for sustainable development. The story of Cape Verde's success cannot be told without acknowledging its global diaspora. For centuries, driven by drought and a lack of opportunity, Cape Verdeans have emigrated, creating vibrant communities in the United States, Portugal, France, and beyond. In fact, more Cape Verdeans live outside the country than on the islands themselves. This diaspora has never forgotten its homeland. The remittances they send back are a vital lifeline for the national economy, supporting families and funding small businesses. They are also powerful cultural ambassadors, sharing their music, food, and traditions with the world, and creating a global network of support for the archipelago. This global community functions as a nation without borders. The diaspora is not just a source of money, it is a source of ideas, skills, and advocacy. Many educated professionals who live abroad actively contribute to the development of the islands, serving as consultants, investors, and partners in various projects. The government in turn has embraced its diaspora, allowing for dual citizenship and actively engaging with its communities abroad. This symbiotic relationship between the islands and their global citizens is a unique and powerful model for the 21st century, demonstrating how a small nation can have a truly global reach and impact. At the very heart of Cape Verdean identity is its music. The most famous of its genres is Morna, a soulful, melancholic music that perfectly captures the nation's spirit. Sung in Crioulo, Morna speaks of saudade, a deep, nostalgic longing for a distant land, a lost love, or a home one can never return to. It is the sound of the ocean, of separation, and of the enduring hope for reunion. Born from the pain of slavery and the sorrow of emigration, Morna is not just music, it is a form of collective therapy, a way for the people to process their history of loss and longing. It is the beautiful, sad soul of a nation, expressed through the gentle strumming of a guitar and a voice heavy with emotion. For decades, Morna was the cherished secret of the islands and their diaspora communities. But in the late 20th century, one woman brought its beauty to the entire world, Cesaria Evora. Known as the Barefoot Diva because she often performed without shoes in solidarity with the poor, Evora had a voice that could stop time. It was a voice rich with experience, a voice that contained all the joy and sorrow of her people. Her international success in the 1990s was a moment of immense cultural validation for Cape Verde. Suddenly, the world was listening to the sound of Saudade and falling in love with the culture of this small, resilient archipelago. Cesaria Evora became more than a singer. She was a global ambassador for Cape Verde. Her music opened a door for other Cape Verdean artists and genres, like the upbeat celebratory Coladera and the energetic Funana. Music is everywhere in Cape Verde. It pours out of cafes in Mindelo, the cultural capital, and animates festivals in every town. It is the primary vehicle for storytelling, for social commentary, and for passing traditions from one generation to the next. This vibrant musical culture has given Cape Verde an outsized influence on the world stage, proving that a nation's power is not measured by its size, but by the depth and beauty of its soul. This cultural pride is a powerful force for national unity. It connects Cape Verdeans on the islands with their relatives in the diaspora, creating a shared sense of belonging that transcends geography. Whether in a club in Paris, a living room in Boston, or a town square in Praia, the sounds of Morna and Coladera evoke the same feeling of home, the same sense of saudade and morabeza. This strong cultural identity, forged in hardship and expressed through art, is the intangible treasure of Cape Verde. It is the foundation upon which the nation has built its remarkable story of peace, resilience, and democratic success, reminding the world that culture is the ultimate expression of a people's freedom. Despite its incredible progress, Cape Verde continues to face significant natural challenges. Its greatest vulnerability remains the one it has battled for centuries: a scarcity of fresh water. The arid climate and lack of major rivers mean that drought is a constant threat. The islands have very little arable land, making the nation heavily dependent on food imports. These are not problems that can be solved with political will alone. They require immense ingenuity and investment. The country must constantly innovate to secure its most basic resources, a daily reminder of the fragility of life on these volcanic rocks in the middle of the Atlantic. In response to these limitations, Cape Verde has embraced the future with remarkable foresight. Unable to rely on agriculture, it has turned to its other great natural assets: its sun, its wind, and its stunning natural beauty. The government has made sustainable tourism a central pillar of its economic strategy. It has avoided the pitfalls of mass tourism, instead promoting a model that is eco-friendly and benefits local communities. Visitors come for the pristine beaches, the dramatic mountain landscapes, and the unique Creole culture. This growing industry provides much-needed jobs and foreign exchange, turning a perceived limitation, its isolation, into a powerful economic engine. Even more inspiring is Cape Verde's ambitious push into renewable energy. With abundant wind and year-round sunshine, the islands are perfectly suited for clean energy production. The country has set a bold goal of generating 100% of its electricity from renewable sources in the near future. Large-scale wind farms and solar plants are already being built across the archipelago. This is not just an environmental policy, it is a strategy for national security. By weaning itself off expensive imported fossil fuels, Cape Verde can achieve true energy independence, making its economy more resilient and sustainable for generations to come. It is a powerful example of how the world's most vulnerable nations can lead the way in climate solutions. The story of Cape Verde is, in the end, a profound lesson in the art of the possible. It is a story of a people who were dealt the cruelest of hands: slavery, famine, colonialism, and chose to build a society based on peace, dialogue, and mutual respect. They transformed their geographic isolation into a global network, their cultural sorrow into beautiful music, and their resource scarcity into a driver of innovation. Cape Verde proves that a nation's destiny is not determined by its past, but by the character and creativity of its people. It stands today as a small archipelago, with a very big message for the world: hope is a choice. and a better future can always be built.